Welcome to MacStories Unwind, a weekly review of everything MacStories and more. Today's show is brought to you by Ulysses. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
Doing all right. Why don't we dive into this week? Because it was a weird week. I'll tell you, this was a week where you and I were a little distracted, and maybe, I don't know, should we talk about that first?
Yes, let's talk about 24 hours that were definitely not fun for us. So, as you may have seen on MacStories and literally any other Apple website earlier in the week, after the release of iOS 14.5 Beta 5, so starting Tuesday evening.
Yeah, like 3 hours later, as far as I could tell, like three and a half hours later.
All links to previously shared shortcuts up until that moment, all links ever created stopped working.
Yes, three years of links shared all over the internet.
From all kinds of people, not just MacStories. I mean, obviously, links on MacStories and the MacStories Shortcuts Archive were affected, but also links on Reddit, on Routine Hub, on other, on the blogs of other creators. All those links were broken, not working anymore. And so we panicked. A lot of people started asking questions, what's happening to sharing. We had an idea that it was a bug because newly created links were still working. And you could still share, you could still generate new iCloud.com links. It was just the old ones that were not working anymore. And so we reached out to Apple, and thankfully a few hours later, I mean, at the end of the day, really, we reached out in the morning. They responded in the evening. They said, we are aware of this. We are fixing it. We are in the process of bringing back those links. And so the following morning, I noticed how the first links from the Shortcuts Archive started coming back. By the end of Thursday, all links on MacStories were active again. I believe Apple is still working to restore links elsewhere. So it's possible that older articles on MacStories, like articles with shortcuts that are not in the archive, it's possible that those are still broken, but by and large, I think they've done most of the work in restoring links on Routine Hub and Reddit. And so it was a big scare that prompted a bunch of conversations about, does Apple really accept sharing? Is it going to stick around? And I think we have our answer, at least for now. It was a whole mess, and every website reported the issue. And the fact that Apple provided a statement about shortcuts sharing, I think it's a pretty encouraging sign that the company does care about sharing. And should anything happen to shortcuts sharing, they know that there's an entire community of people who are gonna get upset. So I think we're fine for now.
I kind of wonder whether the first they heard about it was from, people complaining online, because we did contact them in the morning, and it did take a little while for them to get back to us. And I think I was fairly confident from the get-go that this was a bug, just based on the fact primarily that you could still make new links. But as the day wore on, my confidence started eroding a little bit, and it was nice to find late in the day that yes, they were working on it and they've been fixing it. And I have seen, we're recording this on Friday, I have still seen a little bit of weirdness here and there, but at least the archive and our club archive, those things, as far as I can tell, are working 100%. Any shortcut that I've tried is fine. I haven't tested all 300 or so, but yeah, it seems to be good now. And it was a scare, and I do think it's one of those things that ought to cause Apple to reevaluate whether they should provide a means of backing up shortcuts again. Because, it used to be, and I know you still have some of these files back in the workflow days, you could actually share workflow files and save them locally. And you can't do that with shortcuts anymore. And that's a problem. I mean, that's something you can do with Automator and, Apple scripts and all those things on the Mac. I don't see why. I mean, I think I know why you can't do it on iOS, because I think it would essentially create a little bit of a parallel app store for shortcuts if people could create files that they could exchange outside of the review process. But as a result, that, wanting to keep that as locked down as that is, it's a real problem from a backup standpoint. All right, Federico, in a little bit better news this week, we had the 20th anniversary of Mac OS X. And I like writing these stories because I like going back, and I just kind of enjoy doing research and watching these old videos. And I went back and I watched the introduction of Mac OS X, which actually occurred in January 2000 at Macworld Expo in San Francisco, where Steve Jobs came out and showed off the Aqua interface. And it was a surprisingly long demo, and there were a lot of oohs and ahs from the crowd about the UI, and he explained too how it was built on a Unix kernel and those sorts of things, and that was a lot of fun to rewatch. But it was not until the following March that it actually went on sale on a CD for $129. You get your updates free now, but back then it was $129, and it was cool to go back, look at it, reminisce a little bit, and think about how that transition from classic Mac to Mac OS X is a little bit like what we're going through now, with the transition to Big Sur and also the simultaneous transition to M1 Macs. Back back 20 years ago, there wasn't the Intel shift yet for a little bit longer, but right now Apple's actually doing both of those things simultaneously, moving the operating system forward as well as the chipset on which the Macs run. So that's kind of neat. And if you go check out the story, there's a bunch of pictures that I dug out a bunch of things from the archives and nice. Have some fun pictures there. Another review I did this week was of Reflector 4. And this is a really interesting app. I know it's used a lot in schools and business settings, because what it allows you to do is to wirelessly mirror and stream from iOS devices to your Mac. Now, it does this by effectively tricking your devices into thinking your Mac is an Apple TV, because that's built into the Apple TV, but it's not built into the Mac. So what you do is you install it on your Mac, and then you can go to the mirroring settings and control center on your iPhone or iPad, and you can mirror those devices to your Mac. And you'll see when you do that in Control Center that next to your Mac, in the list of devices you can stream to or mirror to, it has a little Apple TV logo. So it's obviously causing the device to think that the Mac is an Apple TV. And when you do that, the devices show up on your Mac screen as floating windows that are framed very much like your frame shortcut, I guess, in appropriate hardware. So you can do this with multiple devices at once, and you can also stream, not only mirror, but you can stream, music or video from those devices to the Reflector app on your Mac. And so I, did what I usually do, is I decided I'd get as many devices as I could and see how Reflector held up under stress. So I streamed the UIs of a phone and 2 iPads to my Mac, as well as streamed music from Apple Music, 3 different songs simultaneously.
Because why not? For science, right?
Yes. And then I connected my AirPods Max, and I listened to all 3 songs on top of each other,
sure.
which I don't really recommend. I don't think there's a good use case for that, but I wanted to see if it could hold up.
That's for when you want to be really productive. That's
yes.
More songs at once.
Right. I did it for science, but yes, it held up quite well. And so it's a neat app if you need that kind of thing. I think it's $17, I want to say, or $18. But anyway, it's Reflector 4. It's out. It works from the menu bar. It's got a brand new Big Sur style UI on top of everything else, and it's worth checking out for that sort of thing.
Speaking of music, John, I had a link post about Spotify. They are updating. So Spotify has been up to a lot of interesting things this year. It's almost like it picked a great time to switch to Spotify. From a product perspective, they've been rolling out a bunch of really cool stuff lately. One of those things that is coming out soon, because, feature launches from Spotify are kind of weird. They say it's rolling out over the next few weeks. Right. So at some point, you're going to get it. At some point, you will see this updated homepage. that has a new recently played section that presents you with, I believe, 3 months of your recent listening activity. So you can go into the recently played section. It's like a timeline of all the things you listened to over the past 3 months, which I think is an excellent idea. And they're also working on deeper podcast integration on the homepage. You will be able to see new episodes with a badge on the homepage, and you will also see progress on episodes you're currently listening to. Right now, you do get podcasts on the homepage, but you don't really have a sense of progress and you don't see notifications on the homepage. So I'm curious to see how this new design works. I am currently listening to podcasts in Spotify, as I mentioned on Connected. I know that it's something that a lot of people don't understand or forgive, but hey, I told you we were talking a few minutes before recording App Stories, and we said it's springtime and it's time to get weird and try new things.
Yes,
and this is one of those new things I'm trying, so it's fun.
I think you'll like the recent stuff on Spotify.
Me
because
too.
one of my favorite smart playlists that I create is called 90 Days, and it's just the last 90 days of music that I've added to my library, and so I just shuffle that every now and then, and it's a great way to kind of revisit the stuff that I've discovered recently.
And so in addition to Spotify, I also had another link post this week. This was an article that I enjoyed in the New Yorker about the pleasure of sending voice texts, so sending audio messages. Now, this is something that my friends and family have been doing for literally years in WhatsApp. I think that iOS users, and I think especially like WhatsApp came to America relatively late compared to Europe. So on iOS, you can send audio messages, but the audio message UI in iMessage is really bad. It's like it's audio message. It's audio messages done by someone who's never used WhatsApp before, but just as a general sense, as a general idea that voice texts exist. But really, so this article explains how this person, the author, started using audio messages. And all of our friends were like, "Oh, this is weird. Why are you sending me this audio message?" And eventually, they kept sending these audio messages, and it caught on. And so the author explains how they started appreciating the simple pleasure of sending an audio message that strikes a better, more personal and fun balance between a regular text, but also it avoids the social pressure of planning a phone call and just calling someone out of the blue. So and really, audio messages are like almost the default communication method for my friends on WhatsApp. Like they send these audio messages of like 3, 4, 5 minutes all the time, and it's a constant back and forth. So read the story, especially if you live in America, especially if you haven't been, exposed to WhatsApp culture in over the past few years, and maybe try sending a voice text yourself, because it's fun, and especially if you've never tried it before, I'm sure that the other person will reply, "Why are you doing this to me?" It's weird, but it's also fun.
All right. Well, I'll definitely have to check that out. This week on the club, Federico, we had a bunch of neat stuff. I covered as the favorite Calendar 366, which is a calendar app that's available on the iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, and the Mac. It's quite a good app. I go into a lot of detail as to why this is the app for me, and so check that out. The other thing I did is kind of a crazy workflow based around 3 different shortcuts that allows you to save web articles as PDFs, 2-column, nicely formatted 2-column PDFs into a sort of PDF newspaper that you generate whenever you want. Maybe at the end of the week, maybe after a couple of days, whatever schedule you want. And it works pretty well. I mean, there's some specific reasons why it requires 3 separate shortcuts, but it does make the process a lot easier than it would be if you tried to do the same thing manually. So that was fun to create, but I also also spent way too much time on it last Sunday, so I'm kind of glad it's behind me at this point. You had a little surprise in Weekly this week, didn't you?
A bit of a surprise. I wrote about how I'm using Firefox as my default browser on iOS and iPadOS. Now, you may say, wow, Firefox, welcome to 2010. So I know, but Mozilla as a company has been up to a bunch of really fascinating things lately, especially when it comes to respecting users' privacy, respecting the open web. I believe they are, besides WebKit, they are the only desktop browser that does not use Chromium as an engine. They use their own rendering engine that is not WebKit, it's not Chromium, it's called Quantum. So Mozilla as a company is fascinating, and Firefox on iOS, a really good browser, actually, especially on iPhone, more than on the iPad. So go check it out in MacStories Weekly. It's a bit of a surprise story. One of the things that I like to do, I don't tell anyone what I'm doing, and then I come up with this these fascinating experiments. So go check it out. I'm really liking it. It's on my home screen. The Firefox widget is also really good, and it's on my home screen. So yeah, go check out the story in the newsletter.
I'm taking after you with my surprises. I don't think you saw that shortcut coming at all, did you?
Not at all. But this is fun, right? This is fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about App Stories this week?
On App Stories this week, we continued our journey into Read Later apps, and we reached the point where this is the bargaining stage, where we are
right.
imagining our perfect Read Later application. So if we were to design our ideal Read Later app, what would it look like? Which features would it have? How would it work on multiple platforms? So it's a fun episode. We do this every once in a while. We did it for research apps, I believe, last year. Now we are taking a look at Read Later apps. And spoiler alert, the perfect app does not exist, but the fun of the episode, I think, is hear us explain what we need and why.
Yes, and it turns out we both use Read Later apps very differently from each other. So that, I think, is part of the reason there is nothing perfect for either one of us. And it strikes me it's an opportunity for an enterprising developer. Federico, this episode of Unwind and all of MacStories this week is brought to you by Ulysses. Ulysses was just updated with version 22, and it's an exceptional text editor for the Mac, iPad, and iPhone with an unrivaled set of advanced features and a beautiful design that is being revised and refined all the time. It won an Apple Design Award a few years back, and it features a distinctive balance of power user features that writers appreciate in a simple, elegant, distraction-free UI that makes the app an absolute pleasure to use. A terrific example of the kind of power that's available in Ulysses are the publishing tools that are built right into it. You can publish to most of the popular blogging platforms from right inside the app. It includes integrations with WordPress, Ghost, Medium, and even micro.blog right now. So you can do things like not only upload those posts to your website, but they're complete with images, tags, and excerpts. And now with WordPress, you can also revise previously published posts. So that's a new feature in Ulysses 22. The app has things like grammar and spell checking, word and character counts, and even writing goals to set up goals for yourself to write each day. Right now, you can get extended free trial of Ulysses by using the URL ulysses.app/promo/MacStories. Again, that special deal just for MacStories and Unwind listeners is ulysses.app/promo/MacStories for 3 free months. Our thanks to Ulysses for their support of Unwind and MacStories. All right, Federico, I want to do a very quick arcade update and preview of what's coming, because there's not a lot has changed, but we did last week mention Hitchhiker, and that app is in fact out. I have not had a chance to play it yet, but nice. I downloaded it, and I'm going to check it out this weekend, I think.
Okay.
We also got news this week that Fantasian, which is another app you might have heard us mention, another game that we mentioned, is coming out in 2 parts, which is kind of interesting. I don't think I've seen that method used on the App Store yet, but I've heard
not on Apple Arcade. We've
Right.
seen it on the App Store with like the episodic releases.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
Not on
That's
arcade.
True.
Not on arcade for sure.
Right. And the other one, another big one that you and I have been anticipating for a while is Wonderbox. And Wonderbox did actually briefly show up in New Zealand a couple of days ago, which got people very excited because usually, that's the kind of thing that sometimes happens. It was kind of late in the day. I think it might have just crossed midnight in New Zealand and people thought, oh, I see. Wonderbox is coming this Friday. Turns out, no, it was pulled. It was pulled from the New Zealand store after a short period of time, and it says coming soon on Apple Arcade. So a little bit of time to wait. I hope that Apple doesn't release Wonderbox and Fantasian at the same time. That would seem.
I know which one I will play first.
I know you'll play Fantasian. I get it.
Yes.
They both look excellent, and I feel like sometimes we have weeks where it's a little quiet on Apple Arcade, like this week, and maybe spread them out a little bit, especially these ones that are highly anticipated. The other thing I noticed too is that Oceanhorn, which is kind of a Zelda-like game, but this is Oceanhorn Chronos Dungeon. It has 10 new levels, so if that's a game you're into, I have not played it myself. There's more to play there, so check out the update.
Very nice. All right, John, it is time for our Unwind picks for the weekend. And my pick this week is a video game that you can get on Xbox Game Pass.
All right.
So if you're a Game Pass subscriber, you will find this on, I believe, both on PC and console. I'm playing this game on Xbox Series X, and it is Titanfall 2. So Titanfall 2 came out a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is a first-person shooter. Now, if you know myself, if you know me, you know that I'm not a first-person shooter.
No,
guy.
you're not, and I was a little surprised to see this as a result because you're not. This is like you're fighting with mechs, right?
So yes, so in Titanfall 2 it reminds me in a lot of ways of Mirror's Edge. So the adventure running game, yes, because it's got that same sense of mobility, that same sense of like running and jumping around. So in Titanfall, you play as a pilot, and the pilot is like the most highly skilled rank of this army, that like this militia that you're part of, and you can control the pilot on foot essentially, but as a pilot you have great mobility, so you can wall run, you can double jump, and it's really fun, and the game pushes you to explore levels and to engage with enemies that way. So wall run, which is again reminds me of Mirror's Edge, or if you want to go back further in time, Prince of Persia, sort of that wall run mechanic. It reminds me of that, which is super fun. But then as a pilot, you're called a pilot because you can also go inside the Titan, which is your mech, your giant robot that can assist you during battles. And you can control the Titan, and it's super fun to play because when you are inside and piloting the Titan, you have these rockets and you can dash and you can lock onto enemies and you have a shield that you can activate. It's really fun and it's really well done, and the balance between these two gameplay modes is really well executed. I should also mention how this game came out on Xbox One. It was enhanced on Xbox One X with support for 4K at 60 frames per second, and on the Series X it runs at 4K 60 with auto HDR.
Oh, wow.
And it looks incredible. So this is like a high-end PC game that takes advantage of all the backwards compatibility things that Microsoft has been doing, and you don't even have to pay for it because you can get it on Game Pass. So it's amazing to look at, and it's super fun to play. And the Titan actually has its own personality, which it's like super funny, and the relationship between the pilot and the Titan is really funny. So my plan right now, I played for like a few hours. Then I went back to Final Fantasy VII Remake. I am approaching the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm in the last chapter. So as soon as I'm done with the story there, I'm going to do the campaign, the single player campaign in Titanfall 2, and then I'm going to decide what I want to play next.
Oh, that sounds really good. All right, for my pick, first I'm going to provide a little bit of an update because listeners might remember that last Friday, Federico recommended some Nintendo Switch games that were on sale to me, and I purchased Okami HD. So I haven't played it yet.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to sitting down and trying that one. I already owned Mario and Rabbids, so that one I've already got and I've played before. And I actually picked up Mario Party recently too, and I think Mario Day, because, I don't know, is one of the only Switch Mario games I didn't have, and I thought it might be kind of a fun co-op, family type of game to do sometime. All right, Federico, but my main pick, my Unwind pick for this week is a TV show, and it's a show called The Head on HBO Max. And this is a bit of a twist on a classic whodunit type of show. It's, I believe, 6 episodes. And, in a classic whodunit, you've got, there's been a murder or something.
It's a murder mystery.
It's basically a murder mystery.
Nice.
You think of something like Knives Out or something like that, where something happens in a mansion and you're trying to figure out who is the culprit, right? And everybody's kind of locked in the house and they're trying to figure out who was the one who committed the murder. This is similar, but it's set in Antarctica with a research team that has left in Antarctica for the winter. And the winter, the sun never rises, so it's dark, it's cold. They have a reduced size team that that kind of maintains the facility until spring comes around again and more people man the station and something happens. And I don't want to give it away, but it's a really neat twist on the classic whodunit, because you've got, instead of the creepy old mansion, you've got a bunch of scientists who are all in this incredibly hostile environment where it's like 100 degrees below zero outside and it's dark all the time, and that kind of adds a bit of creepiness to it, which is a lot of fun. And I don't know if that's your kind of show. I know you don't like super creepy stuff, but it is.
I do like murder mysteries, though. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you might like this then. It's on HBO Max. I know you don't have that in Italy, but we could maybe work something out.
Life finds a way, John. Don't worry about that.
It does. It does. In any event, I have really enjoyed it and have been watching it I binged it over the past couple of weeks, and because it's only like 6 episodes that are about an hour each, it's very doable and. The kind of thing that's easy to add to your lineup if you've got a lot of shows you're
nice.
watching right now. All right, Federico, that's it for this week. We're going to put a bow on yet another week at MacStories. I want to thank our sponsor, Ulysses, again. You can find me and Federico over at MacStories.net, writing away and doing all the other things we do. Federico is on Twitter and Instagram, where he's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next Friday, Federico.
Ciao, John.